Hello friends, today we're going to be replacing an inner tube on this 1974 Solex motorized bicycle, or moped if you will. And it's really the same as replacing a bicycle inner tube on a regular bicycle because the motor's up front and drives the front wheel, and there's nothing in the back here that you wouldn't find on a normal bicycle except maybe the cable controlled brake instead of a pedal controlled brake like most bicycles have. But the nuts on the sides for the axle nuts are 14mm each. Since this is a French bike, everything is metric on it from back then. We're going to replace the inner tube, which is a 19-inch tube, anywhere from 1.75 to 2.1 by 19. 19 is kind of a hard size to find. Even on the internet, they're difficult to locate, but fortunately, LeBaron's Cycles and Mopeds in Marlette, Michigan had one in stock. LeBaron's is a famous old name in small power equipment, outdoor equipment in Michigan, southeast Michigan. Started off in Metro Detroit back in the 1960s, and they've moved further north over the years, and now they're between Brown City and Marlette. Very great place to catch up and talk about mopeds and power sports and get your hard to find parts, because they have a lot of cool stuff there. So let's get started. First thing I did was mark the locations of the axle nuts with a fine Sharpie marker so that we'll know exactly how to get it back into alignment when we put it back together. We want to not have to spend a lot of time trying to align it, so we're going to mark the locations. That way we'll align it with the nuts when we get it back together without too much trouble. Here's our new tube. This was about $18 locally sourced here in southeast Michigan. And I recommend you try and find one locally instead of going to Amazon and get it. They did have some on Amazon, but not very many listed. And they were just a little bit more money than this. Plus they were going to take 2 to 3 weeks to come to my house. So sometimes Amazon's not always faster and not always cheaper. Plus there's always the benefit of supporting your local shop, because when you need something in a hurry, they'll be there for you. Yeah, that's nice. It has the threaded valve stem. Nice size. Yeah, that should be exactly what we need. Now let's get started. You can see we loosened the nuts on both sides, and the axle and tire assembly dropped out below the mounting slot there. And now we can raise the back of the bike up a little bit, slip off the chain on this side, and pull the tire assembly out from where it's at. There are a couple of small differences between this and most bicycles. The brake cable is set up like this, and that is easy to remove because it's got this end piece that goes through here, and the other part just trails like that. To release it, you pull back on the brake and then remove this down below. When you're trying to remove it from the frame, you also need to note that the brake mechanism itself has a little tab right up here that inserts into a slot inside the frame. You can see the slot right there. You gotta make sure that slot goes into the frame when you put it back together. So now the wheel's out, the rest is pretty much just like any other bicycle. And the tires are already perfectly flat, broken down from the rim. I have a plastic pair of tire spoons, and sadly I don't know where they are right now because I'm reorganizing my workshop. But we're going to go old school on this and just use a couple of screwdrivers to work the tire off of the rim. We start by sticking a screwdriver down in and flipping it over so that we're actually lifting up the sidewall of the tire over the rim. And then we go down a couple inches, insert another one, and work our way around, popping it out slowly as we go. Once you get about a third to a 30-40% of the way around, you should be able to get a hold of it with your fingers and pull it off the rest of the way. And you do not need to take the tire all the way off the rim. Just one side needs to be removed. Just a couple of quick flips with the screwdriver. We've worked our way all the way around to here, and it feels really loose now, like we can pull it apart by hand. Let's give it a try. Oh yeah. Let's see. Just get your fingers under there and put your thumb there and just work it right on around. We're off all the way around. Now we're going to remove the cap from the valve stem and set it aside in case we need it, which we might. Put that in our pocket so we don't lose it. Now we're going to start removing the inner tube right here where the valve stem comes through. We're going to push the valve stem, work it back out of the rim into the inner tire area so we can get a hold of it and pull it out. Once we start pulling it out, the whole tube will pull out all the way around. There's your valve stem hooked to the tube, and now you just start pulling all the way around until the whole thing comes out. And I always say you should give it a quick inspection. Pull it up in the air, shake it down a little bit while holding it up in the air, and then clean out any debris that's down in there so that you don't have to worry about a risk of a puncture anytime soon. This one's a nutted type that locks down. So again, we're going to remove the valve stem cap off it, and we're going to remove the top nut, because this one holds the tube stationary within the wheel, so you never have to worry about your valve stem getting pulled down into the tire and unable to reach it. Now you can see how the valve stem comes up through the rim, and we've got it secured in place with the nut, and it's nice and tight and straight and easy to access when you need it. We've already started working the tube in all the way around, and that was super easy. We pushed the tube down all the way around. You want to make sure it's down in there far enough where it's not going to get caught underneath the sidewall of the tire as you reinsert the sidewall underneath the edge of the rim. You really don't want to use a metal screwdriver or anything like that to try and push it back down into place. The last important part is to make sure the sidewall is firmly seated under the lip of the rim, which means you look at the pattern imprint on it and make sure it's the same distance from the rim all the way around, that you don't have a spot ballooning up or out. And they make it easy on this because you got a guideline right in there next to the rim, and you can follow that guideline around with your eyes, and you can inflate to 36 psi cold. And since it's a moped and most of the drivers of this are going to be not children, they're going to be heavier, older people, you want to probably keep it up near the maximum tire pressure as far as I could guess. And that's what I always do. I always keep these things up to maximum tire pressure. Especially important on the front on one of these Solex mopeds, because the moped is driven by a little roller gear up on top of the front tire, and the roller gear runs across this semi-flat surface of the front tire, and that's what gives you the friction. It's called a friction drive. So you got this little gear spinning really fast, and it's pushing the tire along. So you want this tire maximum inflation, so you have the best contact and no slipping with the roller gear. We're going to use our handy Harbor Freight Bauer brand portable compressor tool equipped with a DeWalt battery conversion, and we're going to inflate the tire to 36 psi. Always put your valve cap back on. People forget to do that, I don't want to take the time, but it's very important to keep dirt and debris out of the valve core, which can cause a slow leak and eventually a flat tire. Lay the wheel assembly in place, and then turn the brake arm upwards so that it lines up with the slot in the frame rail, and guide that into place first, and then swing the mounting nuts up and into position over these little hooks right here, in the frame. You can see I've got the circle drawn around it, exactly where to line it up at. I couldn't show it to you as it happened, but I made a little mistake here and I wanted to tell you about it. I forgot to hook the chain up first. The chain has to hook up before you slide the rear axle into the retainers. And now, since we marked it, all we have to do is move it around and line it up with those little marks that we made on it, and it'll be exactly lined up for where the wheel will still be straight and the chain at the right tension.